board, and we will get going. PowerPoint, sorry.
Oh, I have it. I have it.
Okay, good. Yay. Oh, let me give you permission to share. That might be helpful. There we go. And I have the list of questions whenever we're ready.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I might address that first one about Guide Connect and the web first.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Hey, welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual water cooler session. Let's talk tech. Rachel's back. I'm back. I'm Andrea. The QR code here, this is the link for the survey. Is that correct, Rachel?
That is the link for the virtual cooler Let's Talk Tech survey where you could submit questions, yes.
Perfect. So if you haven't submitted questions and you'd like to, we have about 11 questions on the form so far. So that's pretty good. And then we have some questions from the last session that Rachel's going to address.
You want to do this first?
FIMC, you guys have been with us. You know who we are, Statewide Resource Center, funded by the Florida Department of Education. If you have any questions about the services that we offer, please feel free to contact us. Our contact information is at the end of this presentation.
Okay.
And you guys have been awesome contributing to the conversation. Just a friendly reminder that you make sure you're typing to all panelists and attendees so that everyone sees your questions.
And if you would like us to unmute you, Alt-Y. I think we're going to address the questions that people submitted first, and then we could unmute people.
Sounds like a plan.
And handouts and in-service.
All right. Well, real quick, opening code. I forgot that last time. So our opening code is patience. So thank you everyone for being patient with us and patient through this time.
Yeah, and there were some great questions that, you know, I don't mind being interrupted, but I realized we took some great questions and had some side conversations. So I know I didn't get to some of those last slides, but I'm hoping please use it as a reference and go back if you need information on some of those, you know, some of those different operating systems that we didn't get to address as in depth. You still have access to that PDF file. All right, so with that, so the first question, I just want to, and I may have missed others, Andrea, so if other people have questions from the last session, I'm happy to address those. But I can't remember who it was. Someone asked about Dolphin Guide Connect and have there been improvements to navigating the web with Guide Connect. So I want to talk just very briefly about menu-driven applications. And for those of you, I'm not talking about a menu ribbon, but the menu-driven applications, if you haven't seen Guide Connect or CDesk in action, I highly recommend you look at those links and explore. There's some short videos that you could watch on those two applications. They're meant to be easy to use, easy to learn. And what that means is they're not as comprehensive for web navigation. That's intentional. So you do have some basic commands for navigating by heading and by link and form field, but that's about it. You don't have all of the advanced navigation commands. So it's intentionally meant to be simple with fewer commands to learn. But if you have someone that really needs to be adept at navigating and getting around the web, they're going to probably be better off learning to use a screen reader if they need that mode of input, or or a screen or output, or screen magnification if they need, if they have low vision enough to use that software. So the menu-driven applications are much more limited as far as functionality compared to a full screen reader or full screen magnification application. I hope that addressed that question.
And did you finish responding to Benjamin's?
Is Ben on? Maybe we could ask him clarify.
He said it was a Dell. Benjamin is on. He's here. I'm gonna unmute you, Benjamin. So if you need more clarification, we can get that.
Yeah, that would help.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes,
hi
sir.
Ben. How are you?
Hey, good, how are you?
Good.
So I guess my question was, so I was trying to use TeamViewer so I could see what their screen looked like on with Zoom text on, because I guess when they got it, no one helped them configure the preferences. So I wanted to make it so I could find her preferences and then save it as a configuration. But she said it was on and I couldn't see any difference.
Right. So that's one of the limitations of using the remote options. The only one I would try would be Remote Instant Manager from Ceratec. That would be I haven't used that with a Zoom text user in a while, but I can see some of the effects of the other magnification options with that remote platform. So you may want to just try it out. You could do a free trial with Ceratec and see if it would work. Otherwise, what I do for Zoom text or magnification users is, you could adjust the settings, but you're going to have to ask them to give you feedback on what they're actually seeing to make sure that things are working properly, and that the settings, are going to, be what they need, and based on their preferences.
Okay, I will try both of those. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think, you're just limited with the other options. I think Remote Instant Manager is probably your best shot at perhaps seeing any of those visual features.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Super, thank you. Okay, would you like me to pull up the?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think I have access to the survey results.
I can send that to you real quick if you want.
Sure. Or if you want to, do you want to just read the questions to me?
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So let's start with this. Has anyone had success with online trivia style games like Kahoot or Quizlet that are accessible with screen readers?
Okay. I'm going to say, I don't know if that person is on, or if we're going to be talking. I have the app Smackdown, whether you're attending or not. We could make sure, Andrea, if it's okay, maybe we could include that doc with this presentation. There's a Google Doc that I'm going to share, and there's a number of accessible games that are word games or trivia that may be good solutions. I'm not a big game player myself, but I've heard from some of our other teachers and some of my students who've tried out several of the games with voiceover or talkback, and reportedly they do work well. So there are a number on that Google Doc list.
Thank you.
Also, audiogames.net, which we looked at yesterday. That's a great website to look at just overall for accessible games.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Now, is there anyone that wants to raise their hand to share if there's a specific game that they particularly like? Or you could also wait for the App Smackdown for that too, if it's an app. It looks like Kathleen said, I have not, but all the games are accessible in Quizlet.
Really? I had not heard that before. Huh. Have to check it out.
I actually was looking at Brainpop yesterday and was surprised that it actually, they not only have a VPAT, but it was working well. I tried it on a iPod and Android, and it worked very well. If any of you, your districts have access to Brainpop, that would be a great option. I've only tried it on those two platforms, but it does say on the VPAT that it is also compatible with JAWS. They recommend JAWS, but I don't see why you would need to be limited to JAWS, because if it's keyboard accessible, it should be keyboard accessible. It just means that they might not have tested it on different platforms.
Great. There are some good suggestions popping up in the chat box. And can you add your own content to Brainpop?
I looked at it, honestly, I think for the second time. It was years ago when I looked at Brainpop, and I looked at it just briefly last night. So I don't know. Maybe another TVI on here knows. Quizzoid is very accessible, and developers are very responsive to input. Thank you, Carrie.
Super. Awesome. Keep the discussion going.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that if you're looking at especially purchasing or, any options, or if your district is, you definitely want to make sure that there's a VPAT, which is voluntary product accessibility template. Just because they have it doesn't mean that it will work, but it usually will have a report to say what they've tested. And you could typically have a good idea for whether they've put a lot of thought into it based on what they have presented in that VPAT too. That's not for apps, or that's across the board for any application or app or product.
Okay, Angie submitted the question for me. I'm trying to host online. I'm looking for something the students can buzz in on equitably. Super. So yeah, be on the lookout. Joy will send a follow-up email with that list, that Google Doc Rachel was talking about. So we'll send that out. And so hopefully you can find something.
Yeah, another thing you could do is Google Form. Google Forms is also accessible. So if we've used that for some of our sessions. I really just had one question, but you could have multiple questions in Google Forms, and that's fully accessible. And you have flexibility in how you create the content. There are some guidelines if you look online for how to create accessible Google Forms, because there's certain features that you want to steer clear from.
Would you like me to read some of the suggestions people made in the chat?
Who is that?
That's Liz.
Oh, hi, Liz.
Hi there.
You could read some of those.
Okay, so let me see. Angela said she had some success with Kahoot as long as the teacher reads out the answer option. Kathleen was talking about in Quizlet that the matching games don't work well unless you're on an iPad. Gonzalo was saying that Type Faster has great keyboarding games. And Carrie was talking about Quizlet.
One thing I want to add too, actually, there is, I think it's called Cards, Accessibyte, which is free right now. Their platform has, I want to say it's just cards, but if you go there, there's something that has the word cards in it, and you could actually create your own where you have one word and then either description, or you could create it however you want to, but it's fully keyboard accessible, and that would work on various platforms and operating systems. Yes, accessibyte.com. If you go, you're not going to get directly to the free link. Andrea, I saw you writing something down. If you make a note, I'll add there. You have to go to a specific link to get the trial that's free right now. And he just sent out an email that I think it was limited to 10 days. I don't remember what day that was, but I think it's $5.99 for the next 150 days. They're making it available. So they're going to be even expanding, beyond the next couple of months. Andrea, did you want to go to the next question?
Yes, sorry, my focus got off and I couldn't unmute. Okay, so what is an acceptable speech-to-text state-directed system for use on state testing due to servers recording and processing speech-to-text data? I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to say you reach out to Kath Visconti at FDOE. If you're on here and you ask this question, email me, awallace@FIMC-VI.org, and we can talk a little bit more about this, and I can get you directed to the right person at the state to answer this question. The next one is going to be best app or program. Oh, wait, sorry. How do I convert a PDF to a Word or doc format so that I can use it in Duxbury? I get a lot of worksheets. They're in PDF, but will not copy and paste. I do not know how to convert them. And we touched a little bit on this yesterday.
Yeah, so there's many different, you have a lot of options. Google Doc is free if you're using a computer. I don't think you could do it on a smart device, but if you're on a Windows or Mac, you should be able to go into Google Docs. Now, when you open the PDF, you actually have to open with Docs. That's a key. So you want to first upload it to your Google Drive, and then when you would right click on it or go to the context menu and select open with, and then open it with Docs, and it will automatically convert it to text. You will have to edit it. It's not going to be perfect, but that would be one way. DocuScan Plus is another OCR, OmniPage, OpenBook, Kurzweil, if you have Seeing AI, KNFB Reader. Office Lens is free, and that's an app that you could use on Android or iOS devices. Any TVIs or professionals on the chat, feel free to add any others, but there you have many different options for OCR, and you don't have to even pay or have an expensive application to do it. Any other favorites that I didn't mention? This session is being recorded, Kimberly. And you
the
could
chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the chat will be saved and posted with the recording.
Marcy, Office Lens is free and Google Docs is free. You would just go to drive.google.com, you would upload your file, and then from there you could open with Docs. That would be a free solution. Seeing AI would be free. Yeah.
And Liz is monitoring the chat box as well, Rachel.
Yeah, Office Lens is free, yes, yes.
Kathleen is saying that one of her students got around PDFs by taking a picture with their phone and reading it through Seeing AI, so like you were just saying.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
Yakub is saying that Adobe Pro is great for editing and filling PDFs and can make PDFs accessible.
Absolutely.
There's a free trial, but it's not free.
Yeah, Adobe Pro is not free. I use Adobe Pro. That's more technical, so I wouldn't recommend that for the faint of technical heart. Adobe Pro is a much more advanced application. You could do quite a bit with it. So when I am creating any PDFs, even if I make it accessible in PowerPoint or Word, I always go to Adobe Pro and I go through advanced features to add additional accessibility components. So Adobe Pro is beyond just OCR. It's a pretty comprehensive application. If you have access to that, then you can absolutely use that to make accessible documents and convert text. I don't tend to use Adobe Pro to OCR. You can, but I tend to use OCR with one of the other applications first and then import it. I use Adobe Pro for myself more as a final touch-up for accessibility.
Okay. Next question. I'm struggling with teaching JAWS and Narrator to my high school students. I feel like I have a lot of resources, but no clear path. Do you have any suggestions of where to start or a guide so I don't have to recreate the wheel?
You know, I mean, you want to look at the task that they need to do. When the student's learning screen readers first, they need to learn to touch type. That has to come first. If they can't touch type, then you don't even want to really start looking at screen readers with them. That's essential. Once they know how to touch type, then you could start working with whatever operating system they're working with. And like I don't know if you were on the session, whoever asked this question, but the session, you would definitely want to review the PDF materials for the keyboarding session for Windows, because that goes over, you know, just the basics. Everything they would need to know is those are all Windows commands. They would need to know how to navigate on the operating system, getting to the desktop, getting to the taskbar, the notification area, opening programs, closing programs. Once they could do that, then you could start with word processing and go over basic word processing so they know how to go in, type text, edit the text, use reading commands to read it. There's just a progression of what they need. If you need support, I would also suggest reaching out to your local lighthouse or other community rehabilitation program to see if they could also assist with supplemental training, if that's an option, or if you're with that agency, if you don't have an AT program, you may want to reach out to another CADIS who could also assist with coming up with a plan for that student. It's not going to look the same for every student, but typically once they have the basics of the essential navigation and their system is set up for them, then word processing would typically follow, email, learning how to navigate in dialog box, and then progressing into web navigation.
There are a
you, Rachel.
couple follow-up questions from what you were talking about previously. Oh, I lost my view. So Karen is asking what your preferred OCR program is, and Jennifer is asking about tutorials for making PDFs accessible.
Okay, so WebAIM has excellent tutorials, webaim.org. There's others, but I would definitely go there and start there. I have other presentations I've done in the past on accessibility, so there's tons of resources, but I think WebAIM is going to be the most simple guides. If you do a Google search and you look up tutorial for PDF accessibility, you're going to find tons of information. My suggestion would be, thank you, Liz, start with Word, if possible, or PowerPoint, and do all of the accessibility features within those applications, and then convert, and then you want to do your final checks and modifications. So you want to start with an accessible document when possible. So if you're starting from scratch, start in Word. That's my workflow. I'll start in Word or PowerPoint. I'll make sure all the accessibility attributes are created. I'm following universal design principles. And then once I convert to a PDF, I have very little to do to just do some touch-ups and make sure everything's, that the flow is proper, that it's going in the right order, and that everything is labeled properly. The headings are in the right place. The tables are labeled with the right descriptions, and that the headers are in the right place, and so forth. It gets much more complicated. I know someone, I think it was Yakun, mentioned Adobe Pro, and I do use that, but I wouldn't recommend starting with that. It's just much more complicated, and you could do most of what you need to do in Word or PowerPoint.
And then, so what about your preferred OCR program?
I'm not biased. There's so many good options. It depends on the task. It really depends on what you need to do. So all the options that I mentioned are excellent options.
Okay, thank you. And then we also have another follow-up question from Pam. How do you decide what products to start using for young students? iPad versus Braille Note Touch versus Bluetooth refreshable Braille keyboards and laptops. Is there a guide or protocol? Just wondering how to prioritize for individual students.
So you want to make sure you're doing a proper AT assessment, and you want to make sure that if you don't have a CADIS in your area, I highly recommend you look to see if you can consult with a CADIS. That would be the best professional to offer advice and know how to do a proper assessment for students with vision loss to help them, determine what the best device is. You're looking at the features and the tasks, not focusing on devices. Often we focus on devices first, and that's really not the best way to go. And you can't really just look at one device. Students, if they're going to succeed and if they're going to do well after high school and moving on to college or work, they're going to need to know at least 2 operating systems and at least 2 screen readers or at least 2 screen magnification platforms, whether it's a smart device and Windows or an Android or an iOS and a Chromebook or a Mac. And often they're going to need to know 3 or possibly more operating systems. So it's important to make sure that they have that foundation and that understanding. It's so much easier to learn a new screen reader or a new magnification program, or even just a new operating system if you already have the basic concepts of navigating on a computer. Smart devices are computers, so when they have that good foundation, it's much easier for them to transition to a new system.
And I want to piggyback a little bit off of Rachel said, and it's also important to collaborate. If you do not have a CADIS in your area or someone you can consult with, please reach out to your tech-savvy TVIs, build a little local capacity. Make sure you're also reaching out in your school district to the assistive technology specialist. Even though a lot of times they don't have knowledge about the technology for students with visual impairments, they might be able to help you with the assessment process, as Rachel was saying, looking at the task and looking at what the student needs to perform instead of just looking at the piece of technology to fit it to the student.
Yeah. So CADIS, someone asked, what is a CADIS? It's CATIS. It's Certified Assistive Technology Instructional Specialist. It's the certification through ACVREP for professionals who provide services in AT for people with vision loss.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Liz.
And we can also be sure to reach out to us at FIMC if you ever want to brainstorm or discuss certain things. We're happy to do that with you. And based on a lot of these questions, I foresee next year scheduling definitely some more tech workshops addressing assessment and items like that. Thank you.
Yeah, and someone asked about curriculum for word processing. There are companies that do provide standard curriculum. You could look at those. You want to customize your curriculum and your lesson plans for each student. That's really critical. So if you yourself don't feel comfortable doing that, I recommend reaching out, as Andrea said, to another TBI or CADIS or other AT specialists to help you work with that, because technology instruction really should be customized for each student. Is there another question from the website, Andrea?
Oh, yes. For a student with zero computer knowledge, would you recommend Apple or Windows for accessibility and ease of use?
Okay, say that once more.
Sorry. For a student with zero computer knowledge, would you recommend Apple or Windows for accessibility and ease of use?
Yes, I would recommend any operating system. It really depends on their needs. What do they need to be able to do? What's going to be the best platform? What are other kids in their area using? That will make a difference. What is their family using? What are they going to have access to? There's many questions. That all comes down to the assessment. All of the platforms will work and all of the platforms can be learned. So it really comes down to what they're going to need. And I also would caution limiting them to just one platform. They may need to have different platforms in different classes throughout their lives, and also for different work settings.
Yeah, absolutely. We know quite a few college students who use for note-taking in class their iPad with a Bluetooth keyboard and a refreshable braille display, but when they go home to do research and write papers, they hop on their PC and use NVDA or JAWS, whatever their screen reader may be. Next question. Sorry, people ask more questions and it jumps. How can we learn more about best practices for teaching online for ourselves and to support other teachers and staff so they know how to make their materials accessible? I feel kind of touched on this as far as creating items that are accessible from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think I actually have this website open. Let me swap over. I was looking up Mary Beth Dean because I don't know if I know that person. Yeah, this was actually the website I was showing you earlier when I had this up. This is an AFB blog that I worked on, and I will post that in the chat. But it's 5 accessibility actions you can take when you're moving your conference or class online. And this has some great, great resources. Tons of links throughout there's budget for captioning, think through audio description, give presenter tips, and then down, transcribe it afterwards. And then these resources, most are ones that I've included. There's WebAIM. There's one here I want to point out, the Online Learning Consortium, OLC, Continuity Planning and Emergency Preparedness. They have a free webinar and tons of resources. Also, Athen and AHEAD, these agencies have great material on accessibility in online learning. I know they say higher ed, but really online learning is what they specialize in. And then there's some additional great resources that I've included. And these all have some step-by-step tutorial WebAIM does. And if you go down, I was really impressed by, I think it's on here. Yeah, the guidelines for creating image descriptions. And these are, I think these 3 at the bottom are from the American Anthropological Association. And they did a fantastic job of putting together specific guidelines for success in creating accessible documents, and also guidelines for having poster gallery sessions. So again, that's looking at like PowerPoint or slide presentations. And then image description. So I highly recommend looking at those. They put a lot of work into those websites. So hopefully that would be helpful for you. The session I did from AFB, I think it's afb.org. AFB. And of course, the session I did also with FIMC, that's available on the website. But this one, it had a slightly different focus. I'll post that website in there. You could watch that webinar. This one is going more with the FIMC session. I focused more on the video audio conferencing. The AFB session, I focused more on the remote control technologies. So feel free to explore the PowerPoint that is included there, has tons of resources, and there's also a link on this page that I just shared with additional resources. There's Zoom helpful links, Google Hangouts Meet, resources for orientation and mobility instructors, TVIs, O&M specialists, and then accessibility for learning management systems. So if you're using Canvas or Moodle or Desire to Learn, then there's some information for those platforms. And then some free educational resources for TVIs, math resources, free Braille tools and resources, and some tech support resources. So hopefully those are helpful for you.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see, we'll talk back specifically voice assist for Android, pair with a Braille display. We have Refresh-a-Braille 18s that I would like to see if we could pair with Android-based device.
So you would be using BrailleBack. So yes, you could use Android devices. You would want to make sure that you have BrailleBack set up, and then you would use BrailleBack along with either TalkBack or you know, again, depending on, it would be called something slightly different if you're on a Kindle or Samsung device.
And just remember, if you are using the Refresh-a-Braille 18s, they are no longer supported by APH. Just make sure they still do have the most up-to-date, as far back as possible, firmware for those devices, and you will need to update that firmware so they work a little bit better. But still, we are finding as operating systems update, the Refresh-a-Braille 18s kind of left in the dust and might not function as smoothly as we'd like it to.
Yeah, and you could typically look on either the manufacturer's website or do a search to see if that specific device is compatible with that, with the refreshable Braille is compatible with the operating system and also the version of the operating system, because that could make a difference.
Absolutely. And those of you that are using Refresh-a-Braille 18s out there in Florida, we do have the Orbit Reader 20s available for checkout for loan and Braille Trail readers. Did you clarify whether external keyboard commands work on VoiceOver using an iPad?
So the question is, can you use a keyboard with VoiceOver on an iPad? Yes. Absolutely, yes. And most of the commands are the same for Mac OS with VoiceOver and iOS with VoiceOver. So iPod Touch, iPad, iPhone, you could pair a Bluetooth keyboard and absolutely use the keyboard to control VoiceOver. And you could also pair a refreshable Braille display and use Braille commands to control it as well.
Thank you. Looking for advice on dealing with inconsistencies in Windows caused by feature updates in progress.
Okay, so feature updates in Windows?
Yes.
Okay. You know, sometimes it's not specific to Windows. Any updates with any operating system, you know, the updates, whether it's iOS or Android or Windows or Chrome, when they come up with updates, they do beta testing before they release it to the masses. And beta testing, it's typically a small number of people, so they try to work out any glitches. But when they release it to a larger number of people, people are using the operating system and apps in different ways that that small number wouldn't necessarily be using in that specific manner. So more glitches will come out. So any operating system any update, there will be glitches. You could absolutely anticipate that. Sometimes they break things that work just fine before the update, and that's frustrating. I would suggest report it right away, especially if it's an accessibility issue. At the end of this, I have the, jump past that. Yeah, I have the links to all of the major manufacturers for the operating system. Report any issues. They may already know by the time you report it, but report it anyway. Let them know. And if there is a fix, they could help you with that workaround if the fix has already been established. And sometimes they'll say, you know, we're aware, we're working on it, and hopefully it will be available in the next update. And that goes for specific products too. You know, I have Humanware, but that's one manufacturer. So other manufacturers, you could always contact them if there's something specific to an update that they've released. You want to make sure you report the issues, not only because there could be a fix, but if you don't report it, they don't know that it's something that's broken. Go back there.
Okay, great, super, thank you.
Did that answer the question?
I'm not sure if the person who asked it is on here, but I think so.
Okay, and Alt if you do Alt Y, we could also unmute people.
Yes, I think we can start opening over that. We have about 12 minutes left. A lot of the last questions on the Google form relate to creating accessible documents, which I think you have covered.
Okay.
So.
There was a question in the chat that I don't think we got to from Mary. I'm trying to find it. I think it was talking about, oh, here we go. So pros and cons for using Google Meet versus Zoom for virtual meetings one-on-one with a student.
So you using Hangouts Meet versus Zoom?
I think so. That's what, yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, it really depends on what you have access to. Hangouts Meet is keyboard accessible. Zoom is keyboard accessible. You know, if you have access to either, I would say use whichever you have. They're both fully accessible. They will work. If you have access to both and you find one platform works better for you and your student, use that one. I like both. I use both. Some districts are using Microsoft Teams. There's other video conferencing platforms out there. All three of those are accessible. There's, I think in the AFB session, I'm not sure that one made it to the FIMC session. I can't remember which links were in there, but Vispero has put out information on using JAWS with Teams. So they have a tutorial on that. Someone, looks like Yakub said, one big advantage in Zoom is the ability to mute participants, which is very helpful with students and non-techie people. You know, thank you for bringing that up. It's important to establish, you know, this is a larger group, so we have everyone muted right now. It's important to establish, even if you don't have everyone muted, it's just important to establish some guidelines and etiquette at the beginning. If you have people that are new, there was a funny SNL skit where there were two newbies and it was just a nightmare Zoom meeting. I would say look that one up on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. But you know, if someone doesn't know to mute their microphone, you're just going to get a lot of people talking over each other, and that's not comfortable or productive for anyone. Yes. With Google Hangouts Meet, if you don't have a subscription to basic G Suite or another paid version or free version, if you're in a school district, you can get access to that, or nonprofits. There's different options that you could go through if you're working for an agency. But if you don't have access, then you know, Zoom would be free one-on-one. So that would be one benefit of using Zoom. Yakub said we use Hangouts Meet with older clients so they can dial in by phone, or we call them as many older blind AP clients have vision loss, so Zoom or video call doesn't work. Yeah, you know, what I'll do with Zoom for someone that's not as comfortable is I'm already remoted into most of my students' computers. So with their permission, I'll remote in and I'll do the initial setup for Zoom. So the next time all they have to do is go to the link and they don't have to worry about downloading the software. They could just connect. There's a question submitted about iOS update undo.
I'm trying to, I don't see that one. I see
Yeah.
What is the best tutorial program for teaching Braille Note Touch for students and teachers? I'm looking for this iOS question. Let me see.
Yeah, with iOS, remember that you have free tech support with the Apple Accessibility Hotline too. So you could also contact them, and you could contact them in several different ways I have listed on that slide.
Oh, here it is. How do you undo, i.e. return to previous version of iOS in the most efficient way possible so the student can effectively more calmly use their phone again?
I would contact Apple Accessibility because that's You want to be really careful when you're undoing an update and making sure it's not causing any other issues. And if something's malfunctioning, I would recommend contacting Apple Accessibility anyway, because you want to report the issue first before you revert back so that they could observe what the problem is.
How hard is it to remote into a student's computer? That would certainly be helpful to help students share their screen and enable their camera and video. And Rachel did talk about this on the AFB webinar. Would you refer them to that, Rachel?
I would absolutely, yeah, I did a webinar specifically on more remote control technologies. So I posted the link up above. Maybe Liz can post that again. All right, here,
I'll compile these two into an email at the follow-up email.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and we will have the chats posted with the recorded webinars.
Yeah, lots of options. I wouldn't have time in the last few minutes here to go over them, but there's many options.
Excellent, super. Any other questions that anybody want to raise their hand? We really have time for maybe one more question. I know we threw a lot at you, and we will compile these resources. If you're a Florida teacher, you also have access to a lot on our Canvas site, which we've posted a lot of the resources we have discussed. And refer back to these PowerPoint slides. They're chock full of information. Thank you, Liz, for reposting Rachel's webinar.
Yeah, and then I did a similar webinar where there's a little bit of crossover, but I focused more, like I said, on the video conferencing for FIMC and the remote control with AFB. So the AFB session, I think, is a little more technical, but feel free to watch both of those. The FIMC session is available, and I think they can get CUs if they watch it after the fact, right?
Yes, absolutely. CEUs are available for watching our recordings always.
Can you take one last question about a good replacement for Refreshable 18?
What I saw that, and what I say, Tori, is to contact me individually and let's talk about trying out a few different refreshable braille displays with your student. We have a few on hand for loan through FIMC, but let's talk about assessment and what might work and what might not work for your student. So contact me individually and let's talk about that.
So I just want to briefly, I know we're just about out of time, but real quickly, I have some troubleshooting 101, and this is just very basic stuff. So if all else fails and a smart device or computer isn't working, not talking, it's not responding, or you're having other issues and what you've already done isn't working, what should you do? So if possible, try to take a screenshot. There's different ways to do that on different operating systems. If you have accessibility features on, try turning them off and back on. If it's still not working, turn the device off and back on. You could always just use the web, go to a search engine, type in, you want to be creative and specific on how you're putting the phrasing in when you're doing a search. But often just typing in specific words, you'll be able to get information, and don't be afraid to do that. You do want to be careful about what results you open, that they're reputable sites. But don't be afraid to go to a search engine and explore the issue, and then contact tech support. Don't be afraid to do that. I have in several of the sessions, I have a slide that looks just like this with free technical support resources from Microsoft, including phone number, Be My Eyes, chat, ASL contacts for Apple Accessibility Hotline, the Google Disability Support Team. There's chat, email. You could also use Be My Eyes for them. Vispero, Freedom Scientific, and Enhanced. There's so many manufacturers that have been absorbed into those mergers with Vispero, but they have their phone number, and they also have support through IRA. And I also have the number for Humanware. But of course, if you're using a device from APH or another company, contact them and use those resources. Also, if you have your local CRPs, your community rehabilitation programs, your lighthouses, or if they have other names, contact them, collaborate, your state agencies and others. So, and if you are a CRP, make sure you're communicating with TVIs and the school systems, especially if you're working with young students. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yay!
I think there you go.
All right. I guess you guys want a closing code. Breathe. So just take a breath and make sure you're still breathing. We know we ran from one session to another, so thanks for coming back and joining us. Take a nice, good break, lunch, get up, stretch, make sure, especially Rachel, she's been going nonstop.
Well, I had to run down to the hall to get from that session to this session. It took me time.
Yeah, so you have to change venues. Be sure to do that. So yes, the closing code is breathe. We have one more session today, and that is our app smackdown. So let's battle it out, or not really, but let's make sure that you guys bring ideas, bring how you've been using certain apps with students. Let's share successes and celebrate those things. We want to hear what you guys are doing out there using accessible apps. So we look forward to learning from you guys and hearing what is out there. We do have a few to share as well, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So we look forward to seeing you back at 1:30. Yes, 1:30, sorry. And before we all go, those of you that are still here, it's raffle time, and our raffle queen this session is Sue Glazer. So Sue, if you are ready to pop on and tell us our number of participants. Looks like we have 70 people left, and I'm going to call on, I gave the closing code. It is breathe.
And we have 113. So I need a number between 1 and 113.
Is that me?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You can ask Google.
I'm gonna ask Google 1 and 113. Okay, Google. Okay, Google. Pick a number between 1 and 113. Google is not cooperating. Hey, Google. Pick a number between 1 and 113. All right.
Well, we have some, we got one. 22.
22.
Our winner is Sherma Innocent. Is Sherma still here?
Let's see. Nope, Sherma's gone.
All right, then we are just going to go next in line. CJ Coverdale.
CJ's here.
All right.
CJ, you're a winner.
Winner, winner.
Right,
Okay, next number.
I'll ask Siri next time.
All right, let's see Siri's.
All right, we'll do Siri. Pick a number between 1 and 113.
It's 57.
Oh,
57.
and
Wasn't
she says
as
it with
fun.
conviction.
I didn't get the bingo ball.
Aw.
I have to say though, these randomizers are very fond of the 50s, and 57 is Terry Miller.
Is that TA or TE?
Terry.
Terry's still here.
Right.
And then I did see some numbers thrown in from the audience, so I'm just going to choose 111 from Joy Carriger.
111 is a winner from yesterday.
So nope, no go. Sorry, Joy.
Oh,
Thanks for
Teresa said 3. How about 3?
number 3.
3. Sheila Crawford.
Sheila, she's here.
Awesome. And just so everybody knows, the numbers that you are assigned are completely random. It's a website called randomizer.org. So every time we put numbers in, it just gets scattered. There's no rhyme or reason to it. So it's just truly all about luck and hanging into the very last minutes.
Super. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for jumping back on for this session. Really appreciate it. We'll see you at 1:30 for our last Working with the Techsperts webinar. Do keep an eye out for the follow-up if you're not going to be at that one. And
yeah, I just posted the registration again. If anyone's on here that hasn't registered for that final session, App Smackdown. It's going to be my favorite.
yeah, it's going to be fun. So
So
bring
come
your
prepared,
ideas.
yeah, come prepared to share your favorite apps.
All right, guys, have a good lunch break. If you take one, I hope you do because you deserve it, especially Rachel. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See everyone in a little bit.